Okay, I'm just going to have to get this off my chest. The phone sounds from the past that I present are obviously not parsed the same by everyone. I know this because my least favorite type of office to hear the sounds of is the Bell System 355 step. The reason is that to me, to the way I perceive things, it's all just way too drab. It's the very opposite of colorful. Here is a brief set of phone sounds that I consider colorful. And here are the kind of sounds you'll hear in this program. And you know, the environment I grew up in happened to be pretty colorless because I was served by number 5 crossbar office that had colorless tones. It had a dial tone actually pretty much like the dial tone here. And until 1968, the ringtone for my exchange and that of everyone I called was a colorless tone too. Pretty much like that. So it took something that had a little more.
I'm sorry. We are unable to complete your call or file.
Yeah, that got my attention. To think there was anything interesting there. Had I grown up in this environment, I'm not sure what could have got me playing with the phone. I do find this tape interesting to listen to, just not very colorful. But that's not true for everyone. There are listeners who have told me that they really like the 355 step, so I'm just going to have to stop apologizing and present this tape of Kent, Connecticut from August 1980.
Ross, may I help you?
Yes, operator. Can you tell me what exchanges are local calls from here?
Oh, you're in Kent. Hold on a minute. You're Cornwall, New Milford, Sharon, Washington, also Amelia, New York number.
Okay, what are the first 3 digits of the telephone numbers
Fort which?
for each of those places you just mentioned?
Right, Cornwall 672, New Milford 354 and 55, Sharon 364, Washington 868, and Amelia number 373 in New York.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is 203-927, first 364.
I dialed 36, and we've gone into a trunk that sounds like it's a combination of T-carrier and wire. The community name is Sharon. Now I'm going to dial a 0. This reorder tone is coming from the oldest type of tone plant that the Bell System rural offices use. Actually, this office we're calling from has this tone plant, but they changed the dial tone and the busy signal to something slightly newer. This is the oldest kind. Calling the same place, this time we got a good old, obvious, real wire trunk. dialed 36, we got the exact same trunk as last time. Gonna try to get a single ring in Sharon. This ringtone does match the reorder we heard earlier. It's coming from the same piece of equipment. Let's see if we can get the Sharon busy signal next. The busy signal indicates that this Sharon ringing machine is in really good shape. It doesn't have any speed problems, as many of them did. Often you would hear the busy signal sort of slowing down and losing pitch for typically 2 buzzes out of every 6. Anyway, the ringtones we've been hearing in Sharon are what the phone freaks called CDO ring. The next calls are to Amenia, New York, which has new CDO ring. .37 goes to a wire trunk into the Amenia, New York office, which is also a Bell System 355 step, except it has new CDO ring. On this call, we'll be hearing the new CDO reorder first. The Amenia trunks have a distinctive set of hums on them that is unusual for a rural area. The high-pitched crackling is actually an electrical condition in the house where I'm recording. I don't know what it is. The 1 went to reorder. Maybe if I dial the 3rd digit of the exchange, 3, and then a 1, we'll get a different result. Tried to hang up, but I reset the trunk. That's called choinking, as I found out in like 2013 talking to Bill. Anyway, since I've reset the trunk, I can just dial a 3 here. That absorbs. Not surprising. Now let's see if a 1 does anything different. Not so much. Okay, I choinked again. Here's 9. That cut in. 2. That cut in again. It's probably a working...
Sorry, the number you have reached is not in service.
Oh, wait a minute. That's a vacant level. Let me start over. I'm going to dial 37392.
The number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you are calling local directory assistance, please dial 1-555-1212. This is a recording, 914-373. I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you are calling local directory assistance,
I haven't heard one of these in a while. This text about dialing 1-555-1212 for local directory assistance appeared in approximately 1975. New York Telephone used it in all of their upstate 914 step offices because they had just started charging for directory assistance, and previously they'd been able to dial 411, but to charge, they had to make them dial 1 first, and they chose not to implement 1 plus 411. So these recordings were all over Upper 914 for a while in the 70s.
If you are calling local directory assistance, please dial 1-555-1212. This is a recording, 914-373. I'm sorry.
What number calling, please?
373-9111.
9100.
9111.
Thank you. 373-9111 has been changed. Number's 373-9311.
Thank you.
That was a vacant number, which went off hook, by the way. Shouldn't do that. That was going to centralized intercept. The vacant levels went to the recording you heard earlier. Tried to hang up, but I choinked instead. But now I'm going to hang up for a long time and call a test line, which is kind of cool. I'm going to have to turn down the volume before I dial the last digit. To me, it's a little hard to believe that there was a time in history when this was the way the Bell system chose to produce a 1 kilohertz tone. You would think that a tube oscillator would be better, but this actually has a motor that gets up to speed, as you heard. Now, in New York City and Long Island, there were none of these, except in one place, Sperry Gyroscope. Okay, I've choinked. I'm going to redial it. This time with the volume up. Watch out. This is Armenia, New York's new CDO busy signal. I was looking for a double ring in Armenia, so I dialed every working 100 group. There were actually less than 10. Following are some highlights of those ringing calls I made.
Well, now having checked all the 37300 groups, all less than 10 of them, there are none with double ring, though some have a longer ring than the others.
So far, we've heard an office with CDO ring, Sharon, and an office with new CDO ring, Armenia, New York. Those are the ones that are consistent. But the office we're calling from is an original 355 step with CDO ring that's had its low tone changed to new CDO low tone. So there's a mismatch between the ring and the low tone in this Kent, Connecticut office. Here are some intra-office calls. Even as late as 1980, many Connecticut steps, including this one, didn't have vacant code recordings. Instead, vacant codes were handled like this. What's unusual about that vacant level tone, the one locally here, is the frequency modulation. It's supposed to slide back and forth, not alternate between two tones like some sort of European police car. 100% of the steps I dialed from in the state of Connecticut had a vacant level tone, not a recording. New Jersey Bell had those everywhere too. It's just they were on Crossbar 5, Crossbar 1, and panel offices. As for this company, Southern New England Telephone, the partial bell company that serves Connecticut, by the 1970s they did have to install a recording in all of their local offices. It's just that this recording only handled one particular vacant code.
The 911 emergency number is not in effect in the area where you are. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial operator, or look in the front of the phone book for emergency numbers. Thank you. This is a recording. The 911 emergency number is not in effect in the area where you are. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial operator, or look in the front of the phone book for emergency numbers. Thank you. This is a recording. The 911 emergency number is not.
The next calls are to 868.
I was resetting the trunk there and trying different 1,000 groups to try to find something that's working. I love these wire trunks. 868 is Washington, Connecticut. Let's try to find a working group and get a number to ring.
Well, there we have another case of mixed-up tones. The 868 office also has the old CDO ring and the new CDO low tone. The last two calls were to the same office, and now I'll try to record the double ring from 868 and the busy. No luck so far on a busy. There don't seem to be any busy tests.
672 Cornwall also is the same type of office. The ring is distinct, though. Here's 672's double ring. On these calls to Cornwall, 6 goes to a second selector here, 7 absorbs on that selector, and 2 goes over to Cornwall. Here's a single ring there. So how does it feel to have been in this environment for the last 25 minutes? You know, we haven't heard an intercept recording or an operator since we called across the border to Armenia, New York. I have to admit I'm starting to come around to appreciating these sounds. And there's really nothing quite like it. What's especially surprising to me is how different it feels from the Commerce, Georgia area, for reasons I won't explain right now, because we're not done. In fact, maybe you're ready for some color. In a minute, there's one more call I want to make to Cornwall. This is a vacant level, and miracle of miracles, they actually have a recording.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We're sorry.
That is a local 7A announcement machine in Cornwall, but that voice is familiar. Apparently, she is a standard recording voice for SNET at this time because I recognize her from Centralized Intercept in Bridgeport. There's a call to that intercept in Long Distance Program 1. Let me check the 203 Long Distance Preservation tape to see if this voice shows up elsewhere. Well, yes, it does. In fact, I've got 2 long-distance calls from New York City to Connecticut that I'd like to include here. So let's leave the colorless world we've been in for the last 26 minutes.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
That was a 1977 call, which I'll have to admit is a little too late for the Laramie Peacock. But anyway, it went from my East Side Manhattan Crossbar 5 line through Forest Hills
21233
to New Haven 4, 4A,
2032.
to the Danielson Crossbar 5 tandem, to a small step in Plainfield whose vacant level recording was from the same master tape as we heard earlier. Here's one more call that I just have to include. This again goes from my East Side line through Forest Hills
21233
to the New Haven 2 Crossbar tandem
2036.
to a number 1 step in New Haven.
you're calling?
Yeah, I'm calling 248-58999.
What's the number?
Oh, 248-2000.
248-2000?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Number's okay. Dial it again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Comedian.
I want to call your attention to a sound featured in that last call. It's the gonging noises that you will hear when a crossbar tandem is outpulsing, not letting you hear the outpulsing itself, but the relays are making noises, and from the sounds you can tell that outpulsing is going on. The sounds I'm pointing to begin after Forest Hills MFs. I enhanced that a little bit. We're going to hear that, albeit associated with MFing, not dial pulsing, when we call 611 from Kent in a few minutes. By the way, these recordings from Kent, Connecticut were made from a home phone. I think the payphones here are prepay. There was a single number one step in the local calling area in New Milford.
Now here's 354 and 5.
The trunks to New Milford are T-carrier, so I decided not to record anymore. Hey, can you blame me? It's 1980. I've just been through the preservation of the Atlanta local network. I'm not complaining, but there was a lot of T-carrier to number one steps in that recording project, and I just didn't want to do any more.
Here's ringback, 60 plus 1 digit. Here's the vacant digit 5, 605, and then I'll hang up and nothing will happen.
Next call is to 611. This is extremely confusing to explain. The 6 goes to a second selector here. On that selector, 1 is absorbed, but then 1 dialed again will go into the 611 trunk. What's at the other end of the 611 trunk is a special telephone line that is designed to call repair service every time you just pick it up. That special telephone line is served by a number 1 ESS office, which you can hear cutting through with the familiar tick into a crossbar tandem, which makes the gonging noises associated with MFing out. to the destination, which is another number 1 ESS office. So we go through the second selector to get down to the ESS hotline. That ESS office, once you pick up the hotline, puts the call through a crossbar tandem, which then goes to a destination ESS, which rings. Is that confusing enough?
Hello?
To make matters more confusing, something's going wrong at the repair service end of this. It sounds as if they are hanging up, on purpose or accidentally, as soon as they answer. By choinking, that is, doing the flash to reset, I can make the hotline to repair service recycle.
Repair's working real well tonight.
Telephone repair service?
Yeah, good evening, telephone repair.
Now a historical note. At the time this tape was made, August 1980, the area of Connecticut that I was in was handled by AIS. The reason there's no AIS in this particular tape is that I didn't happen to come across any non-working numbers. Vacant levels were apparently still being handled the old way, but had I come across any vacant numbers in Connecticut, they would have been AIS handled. As it was, the only vacant number I came across was in the one code that was local that was in New York State, 373. That area of New York was still on old centralized intercept.
That's it for the Kent, Connecticut recordings. If you want to hear a rural area served by STEP that has colorful sounds, check out the 3 programs of the Commerce, Georgia area. The first one is called Not Jane and the Commerce, Georgia area, and the other 2 are just more sounds from the Commerce area. That area is served by a bunch of Stromberg-Carlson XYs, which are a form of STEP, but it's tied together with an NX1 in Commerce. There are Jane Barbie recordings in every office, not these. There are all sorts of colorful power supply noises that the various switches there make, and even the hummy wire trunks are quite different from in the Bell system, so it's quite a contrast as far as the way it feels and the sounds you hear, even though primarily it's just STEP serving a rural area. Just one more footnote I might as well put here, because somebody's going to ask. You might wonder what causes this. No, those are my doves making a laughing noise in the background. I meant this.
Telephone repair service?
What on earth can cause that? Well, it actually indicates 2 things. In number 1 ESS, the audible ring sound is generated by transistor oscillators which are amplified through a series of outputs. Each output is supposed to supply just one audible ring trunk. You would be connected to an audible ring trunk when you called a subscriber whose phone was ringing, just so you would hear the tone. The other place that these outputs could go is to a recorded announcement trunk for a vacant code or other recording that played an audible ringtone until the recording got around to the beginning. Now, they weren't supposed to do this, but in fact, sometimes the phone companies would try to save equipment by doubling up on those audible ringtone outputs. They would connect two audible ring trunks to one output, or sometimes one audible ring trunk and one recorded announcement audible ring supply to the same output. This worked just fine, except that if two people were getting the same shared tone output at the same time, they could talk and hear each other just perfectly, clear as day. Imagine this. You're calling a friend whose phone is ringing, and someone else is calling someone they know whose phone is ringing, and the two of you can talk until either of the two called parties answers. Then it's gone. So that used to actually happen in real life. Ben and I made up a random word for this situation. We call it an exchequer. Why? Because the word exchequer comes over from Britain when they talk about the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and nobody knows what that is, so we just used it as our random name for the phenomenon. Just in the normal course of using the phone, we would stumble into these every now and then, and sometimes we'd have fun with them. For example, here is a 1982 recording. All I've done is call a number in the East Point Central Office area that is not answering. I have happened to get an exchequer, which means that there is another trunk sharing the audible ringtone output that I'm currently listening to. All I have to do is wait on the line for the volume level of the ringtone to come down, and at that point I know there is someone else there calling a person whose phone is ringing. They'll stay connected with me to the ringtone until their party answers. Okay, so I'm on the exchequer by myself, but there's another trunk that shares this tone output, so let's just wait. Sorry for the T-Carrier. East Point was notorious for these really awful trunks. I'm waiting for a tick or a drop in the ringtone level.
Excuse me, are you calling from a telephone?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
There, when the ring got louder, that's when her party answered. Good timing in that case. And I'm alone again. Okay, somebody's there. I'm not going to say anything yet.
Before you hang up, remember, always give your party time to answer. At least 6 rings.
They got a recording now. After the phone rings 3 times, it says, before you hang up, give your party at least 6 rings before you hang up. Lord have mercy, what next thing gonna happen?
I don't know, but 1984 is only 2 years away.
You get the idea. So this is a result of one of those. Now, why do you hear MF tones? That's because the audible ring trunk that we got calling repair is using the same tone output as a recorded announcement trunk. Meanwhile, someone who was dialing from a step dialed a call that began with 1, and he dialed a vacant code. This ESS is his CAMA office, and dialing the vacant code makes it go off hook and go to the vacant code recording, which has an audible ring tone that plays until the recording gets around to the beginning. Well, that ring tone is using the same output as what we got calling repair. We just heard the last several digits of his telephone number being spilled out over the ringtone. No one was supposed to hear that, but because of the so-called exchequer phenomenon, we actually got to hear his phone number, the last few digits, spill out over that paired-up audible ring trunk. Had we called in just a second earlier and gotten the same trunk, we could have heard his whole phone number, with a 0 in front of it, because that's the CAMA protocol. Anyway, that whole explanation is what this really was caused by. I can't tell you which number 1 ESS it is, because in 1980, SNET had a bunch of them. Let me just read you the list here. See, SNET was kind of different from the other Bell companies. They were not wholly owned, and they used to like to do stuff themselves more. They didn't like to lean on long lines. So they had as many long-distance tandems as they could, and according to the information I have, as of August 1980, SNET had number 1 ESS tandems in Manchester, Danbury, Meriden, Stamford, Torrington, New Britain, New Haven, New London, Middletown, Norwalk, and Hartford. What's especially surprising about this is that many of these cities already had long-distance tandems that were going to stay in until the mid-1980s. So I see here 2 crossbar tandems in Hartford. There was a crossbar tandem and a 4A in New Haven, also crossbar tandems in Stamford, Waterbury, Meriden, Bridgeport, New London, and Norwalk. I'm actually at a loss as to explain why SNET is adding number 1 ESS long-distance tandems to a network that already has crossbar tandems that they intend to keep till the mid-80s. I don't know what they were thinking, but they certainly had their own way of doing things as compared to the other Bell companies. Having the MF tones spill down the line into an intercept trunk when a customer who has CAMA dials a long-distance vacant code is not at all an unfamiliar phenomenon. Listen to Freaks and Folks on the Hempstead Vacant Code Conference, circa 1971. 5166L1 is the file name, if you want to hear how we had fun with that.
I'm going to get that number right there.
The number you have reached, 9.
Well, that's a whole other story in itself. Probably the most hectic and crazy tape of them all so far. Anyway, that's it for this one.